Say what you will about the era of the Wilds games and Echoes of Wisdom. Love them, hate them, I think there's something we can all agree on. These menus are getting out of control. But this has largely always been a problem with the series. Whether it's too few slots for too many items, wrongly categorizing items, or the aforementioned too many choices, for what started as a real-time adventure game, Zelda has its players spending a lot of time pausing and flipping through menus. So let's talk about Zelda's pausing in menus, how other games do them better, and how I think item and gear selection can be better implemented in the future. Think about this. Because the sword was constantly mapped to the same button, the original Legend of Zelda basically had one item slot. Many of the 2D or top-down games from A Link to the Past to Minish Cap suffer from this same issue, eventually expanding the item pool, giving special interactions to some combinations while only adding one more button. The N64, GameCube, and Wii games further expand the item pool, but pausing to switch between them all is still rampant, and sometimes devastating. Skyward Sword returns to the series' roots and only allows one equipable item at a time. Perhaps the Wii U, having a second screen, would have made these long inventories in Breath of the Wild more tolerable, but alas, it was reworked for the Switch, an excuse Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom, and their long chains of menus, can't fall back on, incidentally making them the worst offenders. In fairness, I've never played any of the 3DS Zeldas, but I imagine having a second screen makes swapping between items a breeze and pausing irrelevant. But many of the 3D titles introduce not only more dungeon items, but gear, pouches to carry healing items, a cavalcade of equipable masks, monster parts, ingredients and devices, cooked meals, separate screens for selecting powers, and a funhouse of copy and pastable assets. Most of the time, this pausing is happening in the heat of battle, when the rhythm of the fight can be too easily interrupted, or the dance can be gimped by infinite healing. So how does one do less with more, or more with more? First, the series itself atones for some of these past sins. 3DS remakes of the N64 games alleviate this somewhat by offering that aforementioned second screen and remapping certain items. And the Link's Awakening remake dedicates buttons to the sword and shield, makes the power bracelet context sensitive, and dedicates an additional button to the Pegasus boots, options unavailable on its original release due to the limited number of buttons on the Game Boy. A series-adjacent, unofficial ROM hack, Zelda Indigo, a hack of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, set between that latter game and Twilight Princess, and appropriately sporting a 64-bit Twilight Princess-esque Link, introduces the Item Satchel. This allows Link to equip twice as many weapons and switch between two sets of 3 with a push of a button, doubling his immediate item pool. Crosscode, an indie action RPG, allows you to switch between 5 different powers in real time, 4 directions, and a neutral. A single button changes melee attacks into range attacks, and another, depending on how long it's held for, unleashes a series of customizable special attacks, which all differ depending on which power and type of attack you're using, making combat not only fluid and an incredibly fun experiment, but a breeze to swap between. Also, if you're looking to scratch that Zelda dungeon itch, play Crosscode. Its dungeons are amazing. Then there are ways around or ways to punish pausing. When using the item menu in Tunic, the game does not pause, leaving the player character vulnerable if you're not quick or strategic. It also has a dedicated button for real-time healing, a mechanic popularized by the Souls-like games, which makes your choice of when to heal non-trivial. Skyward Sword did this with potions, and then Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom not only threw this idea out, but also made Link's pockets deeper than a Hyrule chasm. Echoes of Wisdom at least show some restraint, limiting the amounts of potions and smoothies you can carry, but even 20 seems like too many, and they still heal you within the pause screen. And then there are the popular quick menus you see in games like Terraria or Stardew Valley, to which Zelda and Nintendo more broadly seem to be allergic. I'd say in a game like Stardew Valley, where gameplay is more leisurely, this quick menu works exceptionally well. But in a high-intensity moment where you need to find something quickly, these menus can also be a detriment. So how can we start to remedy all of Zelda's pausing and menuing? Well, we have a couple of building blocks. Allow us to swap powers and items in real time, make certain items context dependent or change how an item works in different contexts. Don't let us use pausing as a crutch to freely heal. Make us be strategic about how we choose to enter combat as it pertains to healing. And one I haven't touched on, the menus in the open-air Zelda games don't provide any level of customization. So grant us the ability to freely arrange items how we wish, to be able to easily swap between them in real time. Or allow us to favorite particular items we can equip immediately with the push of a button. And lastly, don't give us too many options. Which brings us to potential implementations of these solutions. The playground for imagining these ideas is my very own Zelda game. title to be determined, an essential item, the tidal bracers, which I view as an evolution of Ultra Hand suited to a world largely characterized by water. If you want more detail, check out the original concept video. Anywho, the tidal bracers have different context-dependent settings for use on land or near water, and when completely submerged in water. On shore, the magic imbued in the tidal bracers allows them to manipulate water to create tendrils for grappling, to form and climb water blocks, and to jet propulsion yourself vertically. These serve as 3 separate abilities. Because there will be 3 different uses on land, I'm thinking about it like this. There's a dedicated tidal bracers button, which can be used to either attack or do some other puzzle-solving action. You can swap between these abilities by holding a different button and then pushing the ability's associated button. So say we hold R and the Y, X, and A buttons select what now gets mapped to our dedicated tidal bracers button, Y. This would all be done unobtrusively in real time. Later in the game, Link will gain additional power-ups that affect each of these 3 abilities, which can be combined in a similar method, each having their own mapped button, maybe to each direction of the control pad. Underwater, this propulsion system, which can act similarly to an infinite sprint, allows Link to traverse with speed and control. And because you may be traveling large distances, it will also have to be fun to maneuver. Similar to Majora's Mask's Zora abilities, Link will be able to stop and sink and attack in both this position and while jet streaming. And leaping in and out of water will allow Link to chain the in and out of water movement types. Other items like shields or potential short-lived weapons you can find lying about the world can be similarly selected by holding L and selecting the appropriate button. These item positions could be customized, so selecting items is most efficient for each person. Healing and buff potions will have their own dedicated button, but will need to be set beforehand, not in the heat of battle, and will take time to consume. With all that in mind, I'm largely thinking about this hypothetical Zelda game from a structural and narrative perspective, but detailing gameplay elements in this way helps it feel more concrete. That said, I am not a game developer, and what sounds good on paper doesn't always translate well to the real world. If you know of other games that have implemented item and ability swapping in compelling, customizable, and easy to control ways, I'd love to hear them, or if you know a thing or two about game development and think I'm an absolute idiot, suggest a system that could function better. A special shout out to Sophie, Ominous Crabmeat, for her amazing work in helping me conceptualize these ideas, and be on the lookout for more from both her and me as we continue to bring the world of Concept Zelda to life.